Hi, I'm Tiffany, and I'm here with...
Evan Lee. I'm part of the Organizational Behaviour and Human Resources Division.
You've been part of UBC Sauder for a couple of years now. What first brought you here, and what has shaped your experience since then?
So as I was sort of applying to jobs, looking around for different opportunities after my PhD, UBC Sauder at the time was offering a job. And I thought it'd be a really nice opportunity to not only come back to where I grew up, namely the Pacific Northwest, but also to kind of have sort of a nice research community. Sauder was well known for having this kind of really supportive and sort of generative sort of research community among the faculty, and when I met them, I thought that they were fantastic, and so that was one of the main reasons.
Can you tell us a little bit about your research?
Yeah, so I am a future of work scholar. I basically study issues, topics, things about how work is changing in this new economy, new era of work, in this sort of moment in history. And so a lot of what I've been studying recently has actually had to do with AI and its effect on work.
And what's one thing that you hope students take from your research, given today's moving world?
That's a great question. I think what I emphasize in the classroom oftentimes, right, is this notion that rather than the future of work just happening to us, right, which a lot of pundits, books, TikTok videos, whatever, kind of make it seem like that, right? What I try to tell my students is that actually we have a lot of ability, capacity, agency, right, in the face of these changes, right? Essentially what's at stake, I think, as the future of work has been unfolding is whether we actually want this future and whether this kind of future is what we sort of envision for ourselves, for our societies, et cetera, right? And so the idea being, can we then prepare you within business schools, right, through OB or other sort of classes like that, to actually be able to face these challenges head on and to be able to actually have a say in what actually happens.
One of your research studies explored AI and music composition. Can you touch on what you uncovered with that?
Yeah, so I was studying music composers who were developing an AI that composes music, right? And so a big puzzle, I think, that I initially sort of came across as I was in the field was this question essentially of how these people were making sense of essentially automating away their own occupational community, right? Their own sort of work, their own community more broadly. So this notion that people might actually develop technologies that are automating away their own is a little bit puzzling, right? And somewhat concerning for us. So as I was going through, a lot of what I was sort of unpacking was this notion that they were able to kind of take a look at the work that was being automated away and basically say something along the lines of that work over there, that's bad work, right? That's not worthy of our time, it's not worthy of our community. Maybe we can let it go, right? Across our occupation's boundaries and allow AI to take it over. So again, I think a lot of what's at stake here is this question of like, what do we see as worthy enough to take with us into the future of work?
That's very interesting. You've studied how communities respond to disruptive change. What surprised you most about how people navigate these changes?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think that what has surprised me most has been, well, it's actually not surprising. It's just kind of more concerning, I think, right? I think the capacity that people have to throw each other under the bus, right? Essentially to say, those people over there, they're not worthy because they're not doing worthy enough work, et cetera, right? Like things like that. It's not surprising. Sociologists have thought about this for a really, really long time, right? Inequality in society, everything else. But of course, it does sort of bring up something for me, right? I think obviously as we're thinking about what kind of futures we want to create together as communities, right? Occupational communities, racial communities, gender and sexuality related communities, whatever have you, right? The fundamental question oftentimes boils down to what kind of future is good for us, right? What do we want, right? And by extension, who is worthy of being taken with us, right? So maybe not as surprising per se, but certainly concerning and brings me back constantly to this work.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. What do you think students and business leaders need to be thinking about in this moment of rapid transformation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, at the core of that question is essentially how do we deal with the future of work? How are we going to navigate the future of work, right? And I think given the intensity, duration, et cetera, of the kinds of changes that we're actually going through right now, the fact that we're going through transformations that our predecessors, ancestors, et cetera, may not have even imagined in their wildest dreams, right? I think the question then becomes for students and business leaders, how do we actually take what we know and instead of just applying it one-to-one, right? You learn about culture, you apply it to whatever situation. The question becomes, what are the problems that you're actually facing, and how can you creatively draw on what you know in order to be able to actually solve the situation, but in addition to actually create some sort of innovative solution to it, right? Again, we're facing unprecedented challenges, things like the rise of AI, things like climate change, things like sort of political instability across the world, etc. And then the question becomes not how do we then sort of continue with the traditions that we had, right? How do we sort of just, use sort of pre-made solutions, but rather can we create new solutions to these new problems, right? So I think that fundamentally is really what I'd like students and business leaders to think more about.
What inspires you as a teacher, and are there any moments that have stuck with you from the classroom?
That's a good question, yeah. My students inspire me. And I think my students inspire me in large part because they respond to challenges that they face, situations that I throw at them, cases that they read with such ingenuity and thought and care. It's not something that always happens across universities. It's not always something that happens across business school classrooms, right? But certainly with regard to my students, I've been super impressed by sort of the level of attention to these problems and how to actually solve them. Moments that usually stick with me are in moments that are sort of aha moments for students, right? This happens a lot every year. This notion that actually, looking back, before you actually joined my class, maybe you were not able to actually answer some of the questions that you're actually able to answer now, right? You're able to talk about sort of reality in organizations and our social world more broadly. I think that's very empowering, and I think it's sort of something that keeps me coming back to teaching.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Kevin. I loved hearing about your research and all of your stories from teaching as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for the invite, and absolutely no problem.